The rain hammered down in sheets, washing the streets of New Kyoto in a cold, merciless torrent. It smelled of oil, ozone, and broken promises, fitting for the day Elena Vasquez lost her job. Effective immediately, the administrator had said, sliding the dismissal notice across the desk like it was just another medical file. Your services are no longer required. Elena hadn't argued. She knew better than to waste breath on people who had already made up their minds. She'd worked at St. Helena Medical for 10 years, stitching up soldiers, patching wounds from industrial accidents, and even treating the occasional alien dignitary. And now, budget cuts had stripped the human staff in favor of cheaper, automated medi-drones. So she walked. Past the neon-lit storefronts, past the hollow billboards advertising synthetic body enhancements, past the drunk off-duty enforcers looking for a fight. And that's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A low, pained growl. She stopped under a flickering streetlight. The alley ahead was dark, but something massive lay crumpled in the shadows. Her instincts took over before her caution could. She moved closer, boots splashing through puddles. Her medical scanner chirped as she activated it, sweeping it over the wounded figure. Elena's breath caught. A dragon. Not the mythical kind, but the real, alien species, Draken, a warrior race few had ever seen up close. This one was huge, at least 15 feet long from snout to tail, its body covered in burnished scales that shimmered dark blue under the streetlights. It was breathing raggedly, its chest rising and falling with the effort of someone too stubborn to die. A plasma wound marred its side, fresh, still smoldering. Elena knelt. "You're hurt," she murmured. One golden eye snapped open. In an instant, her throat was inches from a taloned hand. She didn't flinch. "Kill me," the Draken rasped, voice thick with pain. Elena shook her head. "Not my job." The dragon blinked. The talon wavered, then lowered. It didn't have the strength to fight. "Good choice," she said, digging through her satchel for supplies. "Now shut up and let me work." The wound was bad. A direct plasma hit. Internal damage, tissue burns, any lesser creature would already be dead. She worked fast, sealing the worst of it with a hemostatic foam, then pressed a dermal regenerator over the wound. The dragon let out a low, rumbling growl, more annoyance than pain. "You're lucky I found you," she muttered. The golden eye regarded her. Strange, for a human to help. Elena snorted. "I was a nurse, not a politician." She finished sealing the wound and wiped her hands on a rag. "That should hold. You need real treatment, though. Hospital grade." The Draken's lips curled in something like amusement. "No hospital would take me." He wasn't wrong. The Empire had strict laws about treating non-citizens, especially ones that could rip a human in half with a single swipe. Elena glanced around. No security drones. No patrols. She could walk away. Pretend she never saw him. But something in the dragon's weary gaze made her sigh. "You can crash at my place," she muttered. A huff of breath. "Foolish." "Probably." It took effort, but she got the dragon standing. He leaned on her, impossibly heavy, but she braced herself and guided him down the rain-slick streets. The apartment was small. A single-room unit with barely enough space for her, let alone an injured alien warlord. The Draken barely fit, his wings folding awkwardly to avoid knocking over the lamp. "Stay put," she ordered, grabbing supplies. He watched as she set up a proper med kit, scanning him again for internal bleeding. The wound was still ugly, but stable. He'd live. For a while, silence stretched between them. "What's your name?" she asked, breaking it. The Draken exhaled, eyes half-lidded in exhaustion. "Varesh." "All right, Varesh. Get some rest." She expected him to argue, to insist he didn't need human help. Instead, he rumbled something low and closed his eyes. Elena sat back, watching him. Whatever trouble he was in, it was about to become hers too. She just didn't know how much yet. The answer came the next morning, when 4 luxury starships landed outside her building. And the galaxy came knocking. Alina woke to the sound of her apartment's reinforced windows humming, the telltale vibration of heavy thrusters shaking the air outside. That wasn't normal. She sat up, her sleep-fogged brain sluggishly registering 4 massive shadows descending just outside her window. 4 ships. Sleek. Black-holed. Not military, not corporate, but luxury. Alina's gut twisted. No one flew ships like that unless they were important, or dangerous. A low rumble made her turn. Varesh was already awake, golden eyes sharp despite his injuries. His muscles tensed as he took in the ships outside. He knew what they were. And he didn't like it. Who are they? Alina asked. His jaw clenched. Complications. A chime rang through her apartment. Someone was at the door. Not the kind of doorbell you ignore. Alina exhaled, grabbed a shock pistol from her bedside drawer, and marched to the door. She pressed the intercom. State your business. The voice that came through was silk-wrapped steel. We are here for the Draken. Not good. Alina glanced back. Varesh was already struggling to his feet, his injured side heaving. Even wounded, he looked like something out of a war legend, towering, regal, and ready to fight to the death. Alina turned back to the intercom. You'll have to be more specific. I don't do takeout. A pause. Then, polite amusement. We are not here for conflict. We are here to negotiate. Alina's grip tightened on the pistol. She wasn't stupid. You didn't send 4 ships for a polite conversation. Her instincts screamed at her to stall. Who am I speaking to? The voice was patient. Too patient. I am Lord Saren of House Vainari. A slight pause. You have something that belongs to me. Alina's stomach sank. House Vainari. Even a nobody nurse like her had heard the name. One of the ruling families of the Galactic Coalition. Wealth beyond measure. Power that made planetary governors kneel. They didn't ask for things. They took them. Behind her, Varesh let out a growl, low, lethal. I do not belong to them, he spat. Alina had to make a decision. Turn him over and walk away. Or stand between him and one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Her heart was already beating out the answer. She tightened her grip on the pistol, squared her shoulders, and opened the door. Outside, 4 figures stood on the rain-slicked landing pad, flanked by sleek, black-uniformed guards. Their leader, Saren, was tall, humanoid, and exuded the kind of effortless control that came from knowing the universe bent to his will. His sharp, violet eyes scanned her, not with anger, not with threat, but curiosity. Alina stared back, unimpressed. You're blocking traffic. One of the guards twitched. Saren merely smiled. You are a bold one. His gaze flicked past her to where Varesh loomed in the background. And apparently foolish. Alina crossed her arms. He's injured. He stays here. Saren tilted his head, considering. A nurse, protecting a fugitive Draken. Do you have any idea what you are involving yourself in? No, Alina admitted. But I have a feeling you're about to tell me. Saren's smile widened. Varesh is a prince. The words hit like a plasma blast. Alina barely had time to process before Varesh lunged forward. Fast. Too fast. Even wounded, he closed the distance in a blur of muscle and claws. The guards reacted instantly, plasma rifles snapping up. Saren raised a single hand. They froze. Varesh stopped inches away, muscles coiled, breathing ragged. Alina had never seen murder restrained to a single breath before. Saren met his burning gaze with a maddening calm. And still so predictable, he murmured. Varesh snarled but didn't strike. Alina exhaled slowly. Prince, she repeated, mostly to ground herself in the sheer insanity of this situation. Saren turned back to her. The rightful heir to the Draken sovereignty, he confirmed. One presumed dead after a rather violent coup. Imagine our surprise when he turns up here, bleeding out in a gutter. Alina resisted the urge to swear. She looked at Varesh. He hadn't told her any of this. Neat, she said dryly. And what do you want with him? Saren's expression turned unreadable. To return him. Alive. Varesh barked a harsh, humorless laugh. To execute me, you mean? Saren sighed, as if disappointed. Not my decision. He flicked his wrist. But if you refuse to come peacefully, it will be made for you. The guards moved. Varesh roared. Alina fired. The first guard went down, convulsing as the shock round hit. The others turned their rifles toward her. Varesh didn't wait. He tore into them. Blood and steel. A blur of claws and crushed armor. Saren didn't flinch. He only watched. Studied. Waited. And when the last guard fell, twitching in a broken heap, he exhaled in something close to satisfaction. Then he turned to Alina. You've made your choice, then. It wasn't a question. She kept the pistol trained on him. Looks like it. Saren's lips quirked. Interesting. Then he tapped his comm. All teams, engage. Above them, the 4 starships opened fire. The first explosion shook the building like a dying beast. Alina didn't think, she moved. She grabbed Varesh's arm and yanked. Inside. Now. The air howled as the landing pad erupted in fire. Shrapnel sliced past her cheek, searing hot, but she didn't stop running. Behind them, Saren stood untouched, watching like a man who had already won. Varesh stumbled but forced himself forward, snarling in pain. Plasma bolts rained down from the ships above, hammering the building, melting steel. They crashed through the door, just as another explosion ripped the pad apart. Alina barely caught herself against the hallway wall. The emergency lights flickered red, sirens screaming overhead. They were being targeted. Her apartment, her home, all of it would be glassed if they didn't move. She turned to Varesh, adrenaline screaming through her veins. You got any bright ideas, Your Highness? He shot her a look, feral, golden eyes blazing. Survive. Not helpful. Another blast tore through the building, shaking the floor beneath them. Dust rained from the ceiling. Alina gritted her teeth. Think. Think fast. They were outgunned. Outnumbered. Outmaneuvered. But they weren't out of options. Alina's mind raced, then it hit her. The back of the building had an old maintenance shaft. Small. Cramped. But not monitored. Follow me. She grabbed his wrist and pulled. Varesh hesitated, but the next explosion sent cracks through the walls. No time for pride. They ran. The descent. The shaft was tighter than she remembered. Rusted rungs. A stench of old oil and damp metal. She shoved Varesh in first. Go. Fast. No argument. He dropped into the darkness, landing hard on the maintenance platform below. Alina followed, heart pounding. The second she hit the ground, she was already pulling him forward. Keep moving. Overhead, Saren's forces weren't waiting. Metal groaned. The ships were descending. They had minutes. The lower levels of the building opened into the industrial sector. Fewer people. Fewer eyes. If they could just... Boom. The wall to their right caved inward. A mech stepped through the smoke. 8 feet tall. Plasma cannons on each arm. Saren hadn't just sent troops. He'd sent war machines. Alina shoved Varesh sideways as the cannon fired. The blast vaporized the space where they'd stood. Her ears rang. Her lungs burned. Move. Varesh recovered first. He charged. Claws ripped through metal, sparks flying as he tore into the mech's arm. The machine staggered, then its other arm came around. Alina dived. The plasma cannon missed her by inches, melting the ground. Varesh roared, grabbing the mech's damaged arm and yanking. Metal screamed. The arm ripped free, wires sparking. The mech staggered. Alina didn't hesitate. She aimed. Fired. Her shock pistol hit the exposed wiring. The mech convulsed, then collapsed in a heap of metal. Silence. Only their breathing. The distant roar of fire above. Varesh exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. That was. The comm on the mech's arm crackled. Saren's voice. Calm. Amused. Impressive. But futile. Alina felt ice crawl down her spine. Saren wasn't worried. He was waiting. For what? Then she heard it. A low, droning sound. Outside, the sky had gone dark. More ships. Not 4. Not 10. Dozens. Alina's blood ran cold. Saren had never planned for a fight. He had planned for a war. Varesh tensed beside her. His claws flexed. Alina's mind raced. They couldn't run. They couldn't fight. So what did that leave? A different kind of war. She took a slow breath. Then, she picked up the mech's comm. Hey, Saren. Silence. Then, amusement. Ah. The nurse speaks. Alina smiled, sharp and bloody. You just glassed part of a populated city. A coalition world. On record. The silence that followed was thick. Varesh blinked at her. Slowly, his expression shifted, understanding. Alina pressed on. How do you think the coalition will feel about that? Saren was smart. He had to be. A ruler didn't stay in power by starting unnecessary wars. I wonder, Alina mused, tilting her head, how long it'll take for the media to pick this up. Maybe I should calm someone. Oh, wait, she tapped the mech's cracked visor. I think this is already recording. Varesh's lips curled. Clever. Saren was silent for a long moment. Then, finally. A sigh. Well played. Alina exhaled. The ships above halted. Then, one by one, they peeled away. Varesh sagged against the wall. You just blackmailed the lord of the coalition. Alina wiped blood from her cheek. Yeah. I did. Varesh stared at her. Then, he laughed. Deep. Rough. A sound like distant thunder. Alina grinned. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. But for now, they were still alive. And that was a win.